Hi, welcome to another edition of the Alan Rosenberg Show. Today we're going to be doing another edition of Greatest Album Runs of All Time. Now, I'm a huge Rolling Stones fan. They are my favorite band of all time. I have about 400 Stones albums, multiple copies, imports, bootlegs, everything they've ever released. When people talk about the Stones and the greatest album runs of all time, everybody talks about basically 1968 to 1972. No argument there. Beggars Banquet, Let It Bleed, Get Your Eyes Out, Stick Your Fingers in Exile on Main Street is certainly the greatest run they've ever had as a band, and quite possibly the greatest run any band's ever had. I would also include Goat's Head Soup from 1973 in there as well. And I'm going to do a video at another point on that run. But there's another run that the Stones have done that nobody ever really talks about. And the Stones' later music is so often dismissed, and it really kind of pisses me off. So here's another great run that the Stones did. And of course, if you're a Stones fan, you know this run. But if you're not, you're missing out on some great music. Here's a quick backup. Okay, so '73, the Stones put out Goat's Head Sloop. I think it's part of the original great run. '74, they released, here it is, It's Only Rock and Roll, a really good record. I love this album. It was the second Stones album I ever bought when it actually came out. I was 11 at the time. But this is the last album they did with Mick Taylor. Certainly the last of their golden age with Mick Taylor. A really, really good record. 2 years later, they're doing the Great Guitar Hunt. Mick Taylor's gone. '75 tour and the '76 tour. They bring in Ron Wood as the guest guitarist. He's their buddy. He's a good fit. They released this studio album. There's Ronnie Wood on the cover, black and blue. Back in '76, and I was around at that time, bought it when it came out. Very controversial album. Ronnie Wood's not on the album that much. Really, Wayne Perkins, Harvey Mandel are doing the heavy lifting. Ron does some guitar tracks on it. But back in '76, this was considered a artistic failure. It did not get good reviews. It's had great legs, and it's one of the few albums. I think there's only 5 Stones albums that the band have performed every single song live at one point, at least once, and this is one of them. So this album was way ahead of its time, but certainly not a classic overall, and at its time it was kind of artistically dismissed. '77, they released their first album with Ronnie Wood on it, All the Way. This is their live album, Love You Live, a fun live album. I really like it, but certainly not a classic like Get Your Eyes Out. So the Stones from '73, or from most critics from '72, kind of a mixed bag artistically. Then they released their first studio record with Ronnie Wood, 1978. The original single that previews the album is Miss You. Unlike any Stone song that at its time. I mean, from Black and Blue, they had Hot Stuff, which was this really funky kind of a song that was far from a classic single, a track that I really like. But Miss You, I'll never forget the first time I ever heard it, and here it was on pink 12-inch. Unlike anything else, first time I heard it on the radio, and when I bought the single, the 7-inch and this, I was like, I don't know what to make of this thing. Now, of course, a lot of people will say it's the Stones Gone Disco. That's a bunch of bull. This Miss You is not a disco song at all, and if you are a disco person, and I'm not, disco does not sound like Miss You. Miss You really is way more R&B than disco, except for the one break where Charlie does 4 on the floor. That's the only disco part of it. But it turned out to be a classic. The Stones have pretty much performed it live on every tour since. It's always a highlight, and the 12-inch especially is a great track. But that previewed the album from '78, which was Some Girls. Here's the original vinyl version, first pressing, and then, of course, it got banned, and this was the second pressing where they had to get rid of some of the people. Some Girls is a masterpiece. I mean, the track listing of this album is unbelievable. It starts off with Miss You. You get When the Whip Comes Down, which is like a punky kind of rock song. Great cover of Just My Imagination. That is just a highlight. The title track, Some Girls, I love. An amazing song. Lies is like punk rock as if it was done by the Sex Pistols. Faraway Eyes, great country pastiche kind of song that almost sounds at first like a throwaway, but it's not. It's great, respectable, great rockin' song. Before They Make Me Run, one of Keith's greatest tracks to this day, and Beast of Burden, one of the greatest ballads of all time by any band, and Shattered, one of the greatest lyrical nods to New York City that you'll ever hear with a great riff. Some Girls is a perfect album by the Stones, and it's a damn near perfect rock and roll album. Went to number one, was a huge hit. Ronnie Wood's first studio record with the band. It doesn't get much better in the Stones' discography than Some Girls. This is a perfect album. And what a rebuttal, because back in '78 it was the time of punk rock. They were trying to get rid of all the dinosaur bands, and the Stones put them in their place for sure on vinyl. Some Girls from 1978. 2 years later, they follow it up with Emotional Rescue. Really strange cover. Of course, this is a first pressing, and it came with this huge poster, which was like this, so it would actually have like possibly 12 different album covers. Didn't really help this thermographic type cover. Emotional Rescue, to a lot of people, is considered a disappointment and kind of a throwaway album made up of leftover tracks. You know what I say? Bull! Emotional Rescue is a great album. I thought it was a great album in 1980. I still think it's a great album. Now, song for song, does it compare to Some Girls? No. Does it have some leftover tracks? Sure, but who cares? So does every album have leftover tracks that get reworked. Emotional Rescue is what I call a great listen. It's still one of my go-to albums, and I got it in 1980 when it came out. I listen to Emotional Rescue more than I listen to Some Girls, not because it's a better album, because it's not. It's just not played out like Some Girls. And it just flows so well. You got Dance, which is this great kind of dance, kind of almost like a throwaway, but it's not, with Jagger rapping on the corner of West 8th Street and the 6th Avenue. I'm a New York guy, so I know exactly where he's talking about, where, in the Village. It's just great. Summer Romance is a really good rocker that could have fit on Some Girls. Send It To Me. Some people say it's like a throwaway cod reggae song. It is a cod reggae song, but it's not a throwaway. It's a really, really fun song. Indian Girl. I know I skipped one. Indian Girl is this amazing ballad that some people hate. How could you hate Indian Girl? It's a beautiful track. It's super well produced. It's got mariachi horns in it. Jagger singing a track that's kind of talking about Latin America and Nicaragua and Che Guevara and Castro. A beautiful melody, strumming a great guitar. It's a lost track. I remember my brother-in-law, Artie, was listening to Spotify, and he heard the song for the first time, and he called me up and he says, "You ever heard some song, Indian Girl? I never heard it before. What a great track." You got it, Artie. Indian Girl is a great track. With The Boys Go, the opening of side 2 is a blistering rocker. It's got some girl singing at the end that's like a female chorus. It's kind of unnecessary, but it's still a good track. Down in the Hole's interesting, kind of a throwaway. It must have been an extended blues jam. They fade into it and then they fade out, but it's a really good, fun, bluesy track. Emotional Rescue, one of the most unique tracks in the history of the Rolling Stones. Here's a rare 12-inch version of it. The first time I heard Emotional Rescue was the opening single, and I'm like, what the hell is that? Kind of coming off Miss You being the first single on Some Girls. It's just the most bizarre track, but it kind of grooves with you, and it's unique, and they finally played it live on one of the last tours, and it was great. Love that track. She's So Cold's a really fun rocker, basic, typical Stones rocker, and All About You, Keith's ballad at the end, kind of one of the first time he's really singing as a balladeer, like crooning, which Keith does over and over again now, but was really kind of unique on this album. What did I miss? Let Me Go. To me, Let Me Go is about the only throwaway track on it. It's basically Stones' Paint by Numbers. Ironically, on the '81 tour, the only song they played from this album was Let Me Go, and She's So Cold. And in fact, to this day, the only songs they've ever played live is Let Me Go, She's So Cold, All About You, Keith drags out every once in a while, And Emotional Rescue, they've only played a handful of times. Dance they played a couple times as well. Emotional Rescue is a great listen, and if you're a Stones fan, you love this album. It's just great. Sometimes less is more, less popular, less commercial. It just grooves really well. They come back in 81 with this masterpiece, Tattoo You. Unbelievable album and also unique in their catalog. Now, of course, it started off the opening single with Start Me Up, one of the best Stones songs they've ever done, a masterpiece in every way. Charlie Watts proving his mettle as an amazing drummer, because listen to what he does on Start Me Up. Phenomenal. In fact, he's all over Tattoo You in a great way. Tattoo You is a phenomenal record. Start Me Up is amazing. But Tattoo You is different because it's the only Stones album where you got one side that's really a rockin' side and the other side is like an acoustic side. Now, Exile had an acoustic side as well, but that was 4 sides of an album. This is really unique. And what a track listing on this album. I mean, side 1, you got Start Me Up. Hang Fire is so catchy. Do, 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 do. Hang fire, hang fire. I don't know why that song is not dragged out regularly. It was great on the 81 tour, and it's kind of a forgotten track. Then you got Slave, which should have been a throwaway. It was originally called Black and Blue Jam, which was a leftover a jam from the Black and Blue album. But they remixed this, put vocals on it, and it's a tremendous track with great saxophone on there. Just a great jam. Little T&A, another highlight from Keith, one of the great Keith songs. She's my little rock and roll, oh, 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 her tits and ass. It's just so much fun. Black Limousine, typical Stones bluesy number, but it works really well. And Neighbors, which should have been a throwaway, is another just fun, outrageous rocker. Great side. Side 2 is even better. The acoustic, mellower side is amazing. Worried About You, which is a leftover from about Black and Blue time, with Jagger singing falsetto, is one of those where the performance is actually better than the song. The song's really just okay, but the performance of that song on this album is just tremendous. Great production. Tops, love that song. Another unknown Stones track. I'll take you to the top, baby. He sings in a falsetto at sometimes. It's got echo on it. It's such a memorable track. Heaven's another one. This ethereal kind of song. Charlie's phenomenal doing his little percussion on there. This heavily reverb guitar. Moody, almost progressive type sound. Really unique for the Stones. No Use in Crying. Heavy blues track with a black beat that's really catchy. And Waiting on a Friend, another ballad masterpiece. Great drumming by Charlie again on there. And just a phenomenal record. Up there with Some Girls and up there with the greatest that the Stones have ever done, like Sticky Fingers and Exile on Main Street. An amazing, amazing album. And how do they top that? Well, you really can't. 2 years later, now a lot of critics are going to say that was the last great Stones album. I don't agree. The 4th album in this set to me is this one, and it's kind of unique. The original single was this thing, Undercover of the Night, and it was the album Undercover. Came out in 1983. This was the first album the band did in the MTV age, really. Now, the Stones have done promos in the 60s. They did, promos for Tattoo You, but they really, really went all out. And maybe that affected me because I think the promos, the videos on this album are so extraordinary that they actually help the quality of songs. But this is, I always call this album a great, great Stones album for Stones fans. If you're not a Stones fan, then this is not the album to reach to. But if you love the Stones, this is a great listen. And kind of like Emotional Rescue, it's pretty much unknown, doesn't have a lot of popular tracks on it, but it's sequenced really well, and it's great song after great song, pretty much. Undercover Tonight is phenomenal, great video if you've never seen it. She Was Hot, another really fun Stone song with a great video, kind of the answer, I guess, to She's So Cold. She Was Hot. Tie You Up, The Pain of Love, really fun song. Dirty, whatever, gritty, like it. Wanna Hold You is a Keith song, kind of a letdown considering the previous Keith songs, but it's still a good song. And Feel On Baby is this experimental reggae kind of dub thing that is not a great song, but within the listening experience of the album, it works just fine. Followed up by Too Much Blood, one of my favorite Stone songs of all time. Here's the rare 12-inch of it. Great video, by the way. And by the way, here's the 12-inch of She Was Hot. Great video for that as well. But Too Much Blood to me is just this song that I never tire of hearing. They've never played it live. I wish they would. I know they've tried it, like in when they're practicing, but never played live. Too Much Blood is awesome. Check out the video. I love it. Pretty Beat Up is just a great groove that Ronnie obviously had a big hand in writing, but it works well. Too Tough, it's kind of a throwaway paint by number Stone song, but it still works. It's still good. All the Way Down's fun. And It Must Be Hell is a great rocker. Kind of has a riff similar to Soul Survivor on Exile on Main Street, and Michael Jackson totally ripped off the riff of that for Black and White. The Stones should get royalties from Black and White because it comes from It Must Be Hell. Great, great track. I always love the cover too. A lot of people don't, but I do. So anyway, there you go. My choice for another great run from the Stones. What are they? 1978, Some Girls. Doesn't get much better than this album. 2 years later, 1980, Emotional Rescue. A great Stones album. 1981, Tattoo You. Just celebrated its anniversary. One of the greatest Stones albums ever. One of the greatest albums ever. And in 83, a great Stones album, if you're a Stones fan, Undercover. So there you go. The Rolling Stones, 1978 to 1983, one of the greatest album runs of all time, if you're a Stones fan. Thanks for tuning in. Love to see your comments, by the way. If you're not subscribing, please hit subscribe. Please check out my other videos. I'm doing this series, Best Album Runs of All Time. This one's a little bit different, but I hope you like it. And I will do one on the Beggars Banquet to Goat's Head Soup series, which is really amazing. Thanks for tuning. Hope all's well. Have a great day.